I'm Dr. Andy Kaufman, recovering physician, plandemic whistleblower, natural healing pedagogue, and legal code talker. You can call me the Truth Doctor. I'm here to shift your paradigm as I perform a radical forensic dissection, discerning fact from fiction, science from pseudoscience, medicine from poison, law from legal fiction, and individualism from collectivism. This is your channel for unraveling the truth about health and science. This is the Healthy Living Livestream. Hello, everyone. Looks like I was muted, so I am back for another episode of the Healthy Living live stream. And today I'm going to be talking about collagen. So I'm sure you've heard about collagen from somewhere, from supplements being sold, from perhaps your favorite YouTuber promoting a collagen product. You might have heard about it in terms of working out and building muscle. So today I'm going to give you the full scoop on exactly what it is, how it's made, how it relates to our health and disease, and what you can do about it. So let's start off. What is collagen? So collagen is a protein, but not just any protein. In fact, it is the most abundant protein in your body. So if you recall a little bit about our body composition, that by weight, we're about 70% water, and that remaining 30% of mass is largely made up of proteins, but also other constituents. And of the protein component, the most predominant is collagen. And there are several forms of collagen, and what it is it's a structural protein. So all the structural components in our bodies, including what's known as the extracellular matrix, which is the material or substrate that's outside of the cells. And a lot of our biology and physiology takes place in the extracellular matrix, are all made of collagen. Now, there are something like 28 different types of collagens that have been found with slightly different structures and variations, but most consider that there are 5 main types. So let's bring up the slides so I can tell you a little bit more detail. So here on the first slide, we have the different parts of the body that have collagen and what types of collagen make those up. And we can see that it really covers the entire body. And this graphic does not show an exhaustive list. But we can see here all of the structural tissues like muscle, skin, bone, and it doesn't show hair, but of course that is involved. And we see the different types of collagen, like for example, types 1, 3, and 5 are present in bone. And this lays the structural scaffolding for minerals to be deposited in the bone when it becomes hard. And if we look to other connective tissue related to bones, like the tendons and ligaments on the lower left of the graphic, we can see that it has the same exact types of collagen as the bone, which is interesting because they, of course, work together. The muscle contraction is not effective unless it's connected to bones to move the body, and that happens through tendons and ligaments. So we can see in the ears, the eyes, the skin, heart valves, in the joints, the cartilage in the joints, and in the spine. All over the body, there are different types of collagen. And of course, even in other organs and tissues like the esophagus, the trachea, right? We have our thyroid cartilage that you can feel in the neck, for example, which is made predominantly of collagen. So we see that it is kind of a universal building material in our body. And obviously, since it is the most predominant protein, our body needs to make a lot of it and has to have the right nutrients in order to make it. So let's look at how the body makes it, because let me just clarify that when we consume proteins, and even if we would consume collagen, in our stomach and small intestine, it's going to be broken down into smaller peptides, which are small groups of amino acids, and individual amino acids. It's not going to maintain the integrity of the entire protein, which is a polymer or a long chain of amino acids that's folded up in a certain way to give it its functionality. So through digestion, no matter what proteins we eat, they're going to be digested, and when they get into our blood, they're not going to be in the form of the original protein. However, the composition of those proteins will vary, and that's why it's important to look at how collagen is made in your body. So whatever you eat may provide the raw materials for your body to make collagen, but your body is going to essentially make all of its collagen. And there even a special type of cell in your body whose primary function is to make collagen. And these are fibroblasts, and they're called different things in different parts of the body. For example, in the bone, they're called osteoclasts and osteoblasts. And they both degrade and synthesize new collagen and help to remodel the bone. And we'll look at a study on that shortly. So here we have the synthetic pathway of collagen. And I know there's a lot of complicated scientific words on here, names of enzymes, but the reason I put this up is not to focus on those details, but just to realize what raw materials are involved for your body to make collagen. So here at the top, the pro-collagen proteinases, that is like the primary protein that is made through, translation in the cell. And it involves a high degree or a high proportion of certain specific amino acids. And the most predominant, making up a third of the pro-collagen protein chain, is glycine. Okay, and remember that glycine, it's actually the simplest amino acid. It's said to be non-essential, meaning that your body can make it, but we're going to look at that a little bit more closely later on. And then the other amino acid, and these, by the way, are represented by those two gold circles at the top. The bottom one is glycine, that's the abbreviation, and the top is proline. Proline is another amino acid that is somewhat unique and necessary to follow glycine in the chain in order to make the proper collagen structure. So you're definitely going to need a lot of glycine and a fair amount of proline. And we'll get into the details also during this talk. And that's going to make your collagen, and then it's going to become a fiber through an enzyme, lysyl oxidase. So that involves hydroxylating proline and lysine residues. So lysine is another amino acid that is important to have. And this enzyme, I believe, depends on copper as well. So we're going to need the trace mineral copper in order to carry out collagen synthesis. Now, in a couple of the subsequent reactions, you're also going to require zinc and vitamin C. So remember those as well. And I want to emphasize here at the bottom, there are degradation peptides, and that not all of the collagen that's made actually survives in the final product to be the structure. Some of it gets degraded because perhaps it's thought that it can't form the proper three-dimensional structure. And then there are also breaking down of collagen that's already been made in this extracellular matrix. So this synthesis of new collagen has to be balanced by that there's a certain yield of the synthesis. And then also, in addition to forming or strengthening new tissues, the old collagen is always being broken down and has to be renewed. So we definitely need a lot of inputs to drive your body to make more collagen. Okay. So now let's look at the effect of collagen in disease. But before we go there, I just want to give a couple of statements about the overall state of the research at present. So we have some research looking at problems or deficiencies in collagen in specific disease that helps us understand what is most likely obvious, that diseases that involve problems or defects in the structural elements of our body generally have collagen involved, because collagen is the main structural protein. And then we have clinical trials, but the clinical trials are somewhat problematic because, one, they're not all randomized placebo trials. Many of them are short-term. There's really no clear consensus of the specific type of collagen to use or the proper dosing. There are no studies that I could find that look at actual foods that contain collagen. They're all looking at different types of powders, and many of the studies even involve proprietary products. So you could see that there is part of the incentive to do this work is to promote, their commercial goals, to sell a product. And that's probably why you don't see studies with foods, because they're far less profitable. Now, we do see some reviews of the clinical trials that are out there, and some of them look at very subjective endpoints like people's pain perception, for example, versus actual improvements in more objective measures of the clinical condition. And there are some conflicting results. So there are studies that show a benefit and other studies that don't show a benefit with respect to various outcomes, like if we look specifically at the research in osteoarthritis. Now, the research looking at skin, and especially at specific cosmetic outcomes, generally is more favorable overall. And in addition to studies on dietary collagen, I just want to mention that collagen is also used in a lot of devices. Like, for example, it is embedded in some kind of synthetic microspheres that would then be implanted in near your esophageal sphincter by an endoscope to treat reflux disease. Now, that sounds like a very uncomfortable way to treat it, but these are the kind of devices that are being used in various procedures in order to help the body heal from various structural deficits, or even in wound healing. Okay, so let's look at some specific studies here that can help us understand better how collagen may be involved in health and disease. So here we have a study from the journal Human Pathology entitled "Collagen is Reduced and Disrupted in Human Aneurysms and Dissections of the Ascending Aorta." So we're talking about the aorta that comes right off the heart in the chest. And we're talking about some, very serious life-threatening conditions with a high mortality. Okay, so aneurysms are when a blood vessel, or sometimes another tissue, loses its structural integrity and swells up. So this would be kind of like an old balloon that develops a pouch on it that swells out, and we know that that material there is going to be thinner and weaker and can rupture, and that's where the mortality comes from. Now, we can have aneurysms in different blood vessels in the body. This study is specifically looking at the ascending aorta, which is a place with an extremely high mortality because it's a huge blood vessel, obviously, and it's coming right off the left side of the heart. And here I'll read the highlighted portion here. Aortic dissections and aneurysms show a decrease in collagen content that could be related to a weakness in the wall underlying the disease. So in other words, it's possible that whatever caused this low level of collagen in the blood vessel was actually the cause of the disease. Now, of course, they don't look at the overall nutritional status of the subjects here to see, are they deficient in certain elements required to make collagen, or are other tissues in their body also deficient in collagen? Like, for example, do they have thinning hair? Do they have low bone density, etc.? But we could certainly learn more about that. But if we look at the next slide, we see yet another study implicating collagen in aortic aneurysms, and these are in abdominal aortic aneurysms. And this study is actually in mice, not in humans. However, it is consistent with the results of the human study we just looked at, and I'll read the highlighted portions again. Basement membrane collagen 4 is abundant in the artery wall, and several lines of evidence indicate a protective role of this baseline collagen 4 in development of abdominal aortic aneurysms. Now, these aneurysms are in a different part of the aorta, in the abdomen, because the aorta goes from the heart all the way down into the pelvis, where it splits into the iliac arteries. And so it's essentially in front of your spine, in the back of your abdominal cavity. And this is where sometimes also aneurysms occur, and these also have a high mortality because we're still talking about a huge blood vessel. And the last highlighted portion, in some, we identify collagen 4 as a critical regulator of the VSMC phenotype and a protective factor in AAA formation. So in other words, if there is adequate collagen 4, then it protects against aneurysm. So here, and there are more studies looking at this, but I'm going to move on to a different area so that you can see that there are many different clinical conditions implicated with problems with collagen. So this one looks at type 6 collagen in periodontal disease destruction. And there is a ligament, the periodontal ligament, which attaches the tooth and gums, I believe, and it contains this type 6 collagen. And so here they found, our findings suggest that collagen 6 plays a crucial role in the periodontal ligament, influencing fibroblast function, in fibrillogenesis, and affecting the immune response in periodontitis. Okay, so fibrillogenesis is making new collagen fibrils that would strengthen the ligament and reverse the periodontal disease. So we can see that we're not sure if this is related to an overall dietary deficiency. However, the deficiency in these studies is clearly associated with various disease states. So let's look at some clinical trials where they gave collagen powder of one variety or another. Now, this one is on women with thinning hair, and they did use a proprietary treatment, which you can see is only mentioned here as an oral supplement. But if we read further in the article, we see that it mostly contains collagen from marine animals and a few other ingredients. And here was interesting because in addition to just reporting the findings from the women, their perception about how their hair responded, and this was after I believe only 180 days of treatment, that they looked at the actual density of hairs and found quite a substantial increase. Like they pretty much almost tripled after 90 and 100 days. And there was a little extra growth between 90 and 100 days, and it was highly significant versus the placebo. So here what they said in their conclusion is the oral supplement assessed in this study safely and effectively promotes significant hair growth in women with temporary hair thinning. So this is certainly promising, and there are additional studies looking at men with male pattern baldness, and I will get to that myself. Now we have a study looking at bone density or related to osteoporosis in women after menopause. And here's the interesting thing. This was a 12-month or 1-year study. And the dose of these peptides, and they used what they call specific collagen peptides, was only 5 grams. And I want you to remember that number of 5 grams. Okay, but here what they did find was that the bone marrow density of the spine and of the neck, of the femur, was substantially increased in postmenopausal women related to taking only 5 grams a day of collagen for a 12-month period. And I thought it would be nice to show you the graphic representation of these results. And on this y-axis is the bone density change from baseline, and listed as a T-score. And the blue represents receiving the collagen peptides, and this light gray is the placebo. So we could see that not only did the collagen increase the bone density compared to the beginning of the study, but the control group actually had a worsening of their bone density over the 12-month period of the study. So this is quite favorable, and at such a low dose. It's interesting. So the dose is one of the main problems in the clinical research. And here we're going to highlight that, because this was a study done in diabetic rats looking at how was their blood sugar affected by collagen supplements. Now, this is not something that we would think of related to a structural weakness or deficiency. So I was quite interested when I saw this study, but here's what it shows from the highlighted portion. It was found that in the group of 9 grams per kilogram per day, that the marine collagen peptides significantly improved glucose, insulin, and homeostatic model of assessment insulin resistance, and increased the insulin sensitivity index. So all very positive things for improving diabetes. And in addition, the lower dose groups that only had 4.5 and 2.25 grams per kilogram per day significantly improved liver steatosis. So that's fatty liver. So their liver get better. Now that it makes a little bit more sense structurally speaking, but still quite a surprising result. Now I want to contrast the doses that led to these benefits with the doses in the previous bone mineral density study, because that, remember, women, adult women whose average weight perhaps is something around 60 kilograms or perhaps even higher, only got 5 grams of collagen peptides a day. Now here, these rats got 9 kilograms per kilogram. So in other words, if we take that same dose and apply it to 60 kilogram women, we get 540 grams. Now that's 100 times higher dose than those women got in the study. So you can see how we could potentially be way off in terms of the potential benefits, because of all the studies I've seen, the doses were never higher than 40 grams per day for humans. And that is still a factor of 10 lower than the doses in this rat study that improved glucose metabolism and fatty liver. And I think that this is one of the main problems with the collagen powder supplements that are available. So let's look at some more data to help us figure this out. Now, this is an interesting study. Now, it does look at cell cultures in a laboratory, not in an organism. So we have to take some of these results with a grain of salt. However, they're quite informative. Now, this is a study looking at the concentrations of glycine and the 3 amino acids, really, not just glycine, but they also look at proline and lysine. In other words, if we add more of those building materials for collagen, do we get more collagen synthesis, and then could this be, an important treatment in osteoarthritis? And they did just that, and they state a couple of things in the abstract I want to read, that collagen synthesis is severely diminished in osteoarthritis, and there are other research papers establishing that. And they talk about enhancing it may help the regeneration of cartilage. Now, there are studies that show cartilage can regenerate. So the old myth that you can never regrow cartilage has now been disproven. And then this requires large amounts of glycine, proline, and lysine, which only makes sense because those are the building blocks for collagen. Now, I want to also show the results here in tabular form. Now, these are a little bit busy, these tables, but if we look at the upper right table, this is after 15 days of culturing these cells that make collagen with either the normal nutrients or with high concentrations of those specific amino acids, but done one at a time in separate cultures. And we can see that the red curve and the blue curve are lysine and proline. And if we increase those, looking all the way at the left side of the graph, the production of collagen does increase, but it doesn't take much of those to make it peak out. So you could see that around a little below 1 millimolar on the amino acid concentration, you have the peak collagen synthesis. So if you add a little bit of proline and lysine, you're going to max out your increase in collagen synthesis. But if we look at the green line, which is glycine, we can see that if you keep adding more glycine, it peaks around 1.5 to 2 millimolar, but the production stays up the more glycine you add. So it doesn't go down to a baseline level like it does with the proline and lysine. And if we look at the bottom left graph, we can see over the course of the experiment, which went up to 15 days, that the collagen synthesis increases over time as we keep putting in more glycine. But when we give the other nutrients, eventually it peaks and then levels off. So we can see how giving a lot of glycine is going to be really helpful in order to drive collagen synthesis. So I'm going to take the slides off, but I'm going to say one more thing about glycine. So it's said that glycine, as I mentioned before, is a non-essential amino acid, meaning that we can make it in our body. We don't need to eat it in food. However, further research has established that the body, although it can make glycine and it makes it from another amino acid, serine, that this is very, very limited because there is another product which comes out of that reaction, which actually feeds back and limits the production of glycine. So in other words, the body can't make enough glycine to have enough glycine to make enough collagen. So we need to get glycine from our food. And this is an issue, and we need a lot of glycine from food in order to make enough collagen to reverse all of these problems related to its deficiency and, be fully healthy, like especially if we want to heal from things like osteoarthritis, reflux disease, aneurysms, etc. So the issue with that is that there are only certain foods that contain high amounts of glycine, and those are mostly foods that contain a lot of collagen, which would be animal foods, because plants don't make collagen. They have different structural proteins like cellulose that we can't digest. So the parts of the animal that contain a lot of collagen are the connective tissues and the bones. So foods like bone broth, especially when it's very gelatinous in the refrigerator, because that gelatinous state is the protein forming that texture. So that tells you that there's a lot of protein in your broth, in your bone broth, if it gels up in the refrigerator. And then the other foods, like chicken feet, pig's feet, oxtail, which is the tail of a cow, the uh, tendon, right? Like that's in pho, the Vietnamese soup, and other tissues like that have a lot of, sinewy material. And these often need to be cooked in certain ways to be tasty. But those are the ways that you can really get a lot of collagen in foods. Now, there are a variety of plant foods that also do contain some amounts of glycine. And those are principally various types of seeds, like pumpkin seeds, especially nuts and beans. So you want to look into that and make sure that you get large amounts of those in your diet if you're not getting the collagen from meat. Now, with respect to the collagen powders, this is what has been, predominantly or exclusively studied in clinical trials and has shown some benefit. But there is, once again, this issue with the dose, because the instructions on the label and the scoop that comes with it will not contain nearly enough of the collagen to have those optimal benefits. So I would say somewhere around a quarter cup minimum dose of the powder is probably what you need. And that would be perhaps roughly equivalent to about a 1 cup serving of gelatinous bone broth, which I feel is superior because we, came to be in nature eating food, not eating dried powders. So I think if that was studied, it would be shown to be superior. Now, it's also important that we get those other factors in our diet that I mentioned besides just the right amino acids, and those include copper, zinc, and some vitamin C. But unfortunately, the vitamin C is not consumed by the reaction and can be reused. So we only need a very small amount of that. And interestingly, there are many people providing anecdotal evidence on a strictly carnivore diet that they actually can increase their bone density and their cartilage on that diet with very small amounts of vitamin C. So don't feel like you have to go out and eat a bunch of strawberries or citrus fruit to get the vitamin C. Only small amounts are required, but it is vital to get those minerals because they are not present in our modern food supply. So certainly you can take a look at a product like Shilajit, which there's more information about on my website, and as part of this solution to repair your body's structural tissues and help your body make the right amount of collagen. All right, well, I am done with my presentation today. I hope that this was informative and now you understand the basics about collagen and the current state of the clinical evidence and how it may help you. So I'd be happy to answer a couple of questions. Scott, if you want to put it on screen. All right, Sandra Earl asks, I have Ehlers-Danlos my whole life. It has created more issues as I have aged. I assume collagen deficiency, and my mother was a child of the depression, undernourished. I was born when she was 19. Am I on the right track? Well, certainly is possible. And if this condition, which, is a collagen deficiency, I believe it's said to be a genetic condition, but there are some definitely holes in that story. So yeah, this, whatever the conditions were around the time that you developed these health issues is most likely has some causal relationship. So I think you are on the right track, and hopefully there are ways that you can figure out from what I'm teaching today to help your body reverse this situation as much as possible. All right, Ezoro asks, are collagen peptides products for human consumption worthwhile? Well, I think that you can benefit from these powders, and I'll give a little personal anecdote because there was a family member, a woman in her 70s in my family who was having thinning hair and hair loss. And of course, they first fell for all of the gimmicky hair tonics that are advertised out there on the internet, and none of them helped. So she came to me, and I suggested that she drink some bone broth, but she was kind of grossed out even by bone broth, which really, is just soup. But the idea of it, so she was agreeable to gelatin powder. And she took a quarter cup of gelatin powder a day for 3 months, and her whole hair situation turned around. So I do think that if you use the powder, it can be effective. But in my opinion, it's not the optimal way to take it. Let me also say that, especially when you're taking a large volume of that powder, because it's so dry, it can clump up in your gut if you don't drink enough water with it. So make sure you have, a full 16 or 12 to 16 ounce glass of water to wash that down, so it doesn't clump up or cause any kind of issues in your digestive tract. All right, we could take a couple more. Gabrielle S. asks, would chicken soup also be a source of collagen? Well, absolutely, but it depends on how long you cook it. And that's the key to extracting the collagen out of the cartilage and bones and skin in whatever type of meat you're making the broth from. So chicken works well. Now, of course, chicken feet, and you can make a bone broth just from chicken feet itself. And I believe I have a recipe available for that somewhere. But you have to, of course, have like the whole chicken, so it has the bones and the skin and cartilage. And if you add the neck, that will provide some additional cartilage. So for a chicken, it's a little bit easier to extract the collagen because the size of the bones compared to if you're using beef bones. So usually 24 hours of a slow simmer is enough for chicken feet or a whole chicken to really get out all of the collagen. And always the way you know if you have a collagenous broth is the testing it in the refrigerator. Leave it in there till it's fully chilled, and then give the vessel a shake, and you should be able to see it wiggle and jiggle just like a bowl of Jello, and that lets you know that you have got the right thing. All right, it looks like that's it for today. So I hope you enjoyed another Healthy Living live stream, and I wish you well on your journey to start helping your body make more collagen by eating foods with high levels of those amino acids, glycine, proline, and lysine, but especially glycine. Consider getting it from foods rather than powders, but got to be a quarter cup of the powder. Don't forget about the minerals with a product like Shilajit, and you only need a little bit of vitamin C to make this whole thing work for you. I look forward to seeing you again next week for another Healthy Living live stream. So until then.